Want more game-changing insights from the best and last mile delivery? Stay locked in with Last to First. Follow us on social media for exclusive clips, behind-the-scene content, and expert tips. Subscribe to our podcast so you never miss a beat. Join the conversation. Send us some comments, drop in your questions, and become a part of the Last to First movement. Want to be a guest or know someone that should be? Hit us up and let's get them on the show. If you're interested in sponsorship opportunities, reach out to us. We'd love to work with you. Find us on social media with @LastToFirstPodcast. Send email to info@LastToFirstPodcast.com or go check out our website and let us know how we can support, help, and bring you better content going forward. Now back to Last to First. All right, Last to First family, we are back. I am Jason Burns, your host, and today we have something special. We cooked up a good one for you. We've got an off-season exclusive. I've got in the house today, we got Pete Fidopiastis, who is the president and general counsel of SCI. And we're going to talk a lot of things today, some current events. We're going to talk about SCI and what they bring to the table. But first, Pete, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is really exciting.
This is really exciting.
Absolutely.
We had a couple takes here early on, but we're warmed up now.
So my last name is not the easiest last name, and you did excellent.
I don't know about that, but we got it right. So look, first we're here. We're gonna get into some fun, exciting topics we'll talk about. But first and foremost, unfortunately, we're here in Saratoga Springs, New York, to bury a good friend of both of ours, former colleague of yours,
Yep.
Past CLDA president, Hall of Famer Rob Slack.
Yeah,
Rob,
it's a sad day.
Sad day.
It's hard to say what Rob meant to me because he was the one that brought me into this business.
Wow.
I turned him down 3 times. He offered me the job 3 times to be general counsel at SCI. And each time I said, Rob, I can't do it, man.
Yeah.
I need to learn New York stuff. I had been an attorney in California, and I was like, I got to just put my head to into what's going on in New York.
Yeah.
Because although the process is similar, it's not exactly the same thing. And Rob would always look at me and say, Fid, I need you. And I said, I don't think I can do it. You're not busy enough.
Yeah.
And then finally on the 4th time, I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I had been doing work all along with those guys.
Yeah. When was this?
SCI.
This was what year was this?
And this is 2010.
Okay.
Right around there, 2011.
Yeah.
And so finally I come in and I was like, oh my God. I went from being an employment lawyer that dealt with independent contractors maybe once every 2 years, 3 years, to being everything about misclassification and independent contractors. And Rob and I had a lot of good times.
Yeah.
He was my main witness. And his specialty move was to kind of break out into like he pretty much take the flag and bring it out, and this is America, and this is the way we should do it.
Yeah.
And so we always had a lot of laughs.
He was an incredible man. He was an ambassador for this industry. I really first came to contact with him on the CLDA board. He was actually off the board when I got on, but he was a past president, but he was very active, engaged, particularly around government affairs, as you were talking about, with his passion there. And then we got to work with each other. Obviously, we used to be a client of SCI, and so we worked together there. And then I won't go into the details, but there was a big vote on a big CLD issue, and I voted against this issue. And it was an issue of something that Rob had brought forward, and I was just on the opposite end of it. And admittedly, I was wrong about this. He was right, and what he did, not just for the industry, but for our association, I really took my hat off to him. But more importantly, for the impact he made on so many people. Right, he's helped so many people out that got into bad situations.
A remarkable career. When you look back on it, and I was looking at some old photos of when I first came on. He was 50 years old. And by then, he had lived a life.
He did everything.
He's done everything.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, he would come into my room because I had an office right next to him, and he always had a business idea. And it was, he would come up with crazy stuff all the time, but he was such an enthusiastic, just go ahead forward. And I remember the last one he had was like this, I forget what they called it. I forget what he called it, but he always had these clever names. But it was a cover for your fishing reels.
Okay.
It was like the Reel Reels or something like that. And he comes in, he's like, Fid, what do you think?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, geez, it's a cool idea. I like it. All right. So a couple days go by, we're talking about a case, and he says to me, hey, I got to run home. I said, well, what are you going to run home for? He's like, I got a box coming. I was like, well, of what? And he's like, real things. And I was like, so you got to go home and get them? I mean, can't you wait till we're done with work and everything? Yeah. And he looks at me and goes, it's 10,000. I shipped 10,000 from China or wherever the heck he had a whole crate of it in his
inventory. Yeah.
I was like, you haven't sold one of them and you got 10,000?
That was him.
But that was him. He was all in all the time with an idea or whatever. Yeah. So
one of my favorite stories, when we're sitting in Saratoga, we would come here for board meetings, and it would be always coincide with opening day at the racetrack.
Yeah.
And several of those guys had the "Don't Tell My Wife" horses stable, right? The business they went. So I was up here the first time. I never really bet on horses, and we're up in the suites, and he's like, "Have you ever heard of the Slacker Tracker?" I'm like, what? And he had created his own system for horse betting. And I'm telling you, I followed that thing to the T that day. I came home with $1,000 in my pocket. Great
Slack
man.
At the track.
Slack at the track. Yeah. So
was one of those things.
Truly a legend. He will be missed. And for many in the community out there, I know express a lot of condolences to him and his family. So
it was, one of the things that I was most pleased about, I guess, I hadn't really spoken to him in a couple months, but getting a chance, obviously knowing that he was sick and everything like that, but getting an opportunity to tell him how much, I appreciated what he did for me was, for me it was, I'm glad I could close it that way. It felt good. I think for him, I hope he appreciated what I was trying to say to him. Yeah. 100%. He was a really nice guy.
Yeah. I was able to text him a couple of days before he passed too, and kind of said the same. So truly will be missed. All right, so we'll transition away from that. Let's start with your background. So you mentioned earlier that you're an attorney.
Yeah.
You have a pretty unique background that puts you in good position to what you're doing today.
Yeah.
Talk about your background and kind of how you got to SCI.
So I'll tell you how I got here, because sometimes it's a whirlwind, and I owe a lot of it to Rob, actually. But so I was had gone to law school out in California, passed the bar, practiced law. I was an employment attorney, and was practicing for about a couple of years at that point. And at the time, SCI was owned by the Lefebvre family.
Okay.
And I went to school with Mark and Scott, and which were the sons. And I ended up, they called me about some issues. And so I was like, sure, yeah, I can take care of them. So I was doing their work in California, probably, this is 2005, 6, 7, so right around there. And so I'd been doing it all along. And then I met Rob, and like I said, Rob was kind of like the main focal point for all the legal stuff that was going on with SCI and the clients and stuff. So having met Rob, he and I started working closely together, although I was still in California. I didn't come back. I was just doing all New York.
This is home for you, though. You're from here.
Yeah. So I grew up in Glens Falls, which is where SCI is located.
Yeah.
And so through a bunch of events, I ended up moving back and took the bar here, passed the bar. So now I was dual practicing. I was practicing in California and in New York, and I was doing employment law in both spots, general business stuff as well.
Yeah.
And then that's when Rob kind of was like, and Rob and I were working always pretty closely together at that time. And so that's when he was like, hey, you really should think about becoming general counsel. And my fear was, when you're a litigator, you kind of there's a certain rhythm to what you do.
Yeah.
Just like anything, right? Yeah. And once you're in that arena, once you step out of it, you kind of lose your edge a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so being general counsel was a neat proposition, but once you lose your edge as a litigator, you're really kind of worthless.
It's kind of it.
Yeah. So that's what I was really worried about, was getting further away from litigation instead of, which is what I'd like to do. That was my passion.
Yeah.
So joining SCI, I realized I'm still in a lot of litigation. Yeah. Even though I'm general counsel, I should be hiring more people to do it. But I do a lot of it.
So talk about SCI. So obviously, I used to my family's business. When I first got into the industry, we were using NICA, and then we transitioned to SCI.
Yes.
And so I believe you were there.
I was there. Yeah.
So we worked
your
together.
Dad and mom. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But for the audience out there who may not be familiar with SCI, maybe a little history of SCI, and also what you guys do today in the final mile space.
SCI is a 30-year-old company. It was started by Bob Lefebvre, and at the time he was running a PEO, which is a professional employment organization, and he thought that there was a niche to be had after seeing what NICA was doing. Okay. So he wasn't the originator of the idea. Tommy McGrath, the GOAT, he'd appreciate that, was the originator.
Shout out to Tom McGrath.
Yeah. So he thought that there was more that can be done in the space. Yeah. And so it's built around payment processing, but the add-ons to that are the ability to go out into the marketplace, get insurance carriers, vendors of all kinds to offer different, products to independent contractors. The service also goes to the companies, right? The courier companies. Sure. So it takes a load off of them for compliance, to doing all the back office stuff that they don't have to worry about necessarily. Yep. So for 30 years, that's what we've been doing. And since I've been general counsel and now president, the wholesale changes in the industry have been incredible. Yeah. I was talking, and we'll probably talk about it but a little bit later, but at the ECA, I was talking to David Pickering, and I told him the one thing that I'm amazed about looking back on this is when I started at SCI, it was a paper business. It was, and the average age of our employees was, I want to say 45. Yeah. And most of those people have all retired now. We've decreased our age by, I think our average age is probably 25, 26. And with that has come great innovative changes, technology-wise and those things. So it's been both good and bad, right? Sure. You're bringing in a lot of people that don't have the experience that some of the older people have, but when it comes to computers and technology and how to operate it and what to, how to make life better for everybody using that stuff, there's no comparison. Yeah, especially when you see,
this is pre-gig economy. We're talking about. So, but now having younger folks in there who understand the gig kind of space a little bit more, the psyche, the behavior of the drivers that you're supporting.
Absolutely.
Makes a difference. How many drivers roughly are on the platform today?
I wouldn't know the exact number, but it's well over 40,000.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that we process payments for on a weekly basis. I mean, it's quite a bit.
All in the kind of last mile, final mile space? You have some different verticals?
Primarily all there, some trucking.
Okay.
But with an eye towards transportation. We really don't get out of that space very much. Got it. There's been some, a couple clients that have done some medical transportation, which is like people moving more or less, but not a lot. We generally want to stick into that courier company final mile space.
And you guys offer insurance products to the drivers, to your
we sponsor insurance programs. Okay, absolutely. A couple of years ago, obviously everybody offers, basically the basics, right? Essentially any work-related injury protection, ACAC as it's called in our industry. We offer that. We started with a new partner, Intact, which used to be the old One Beacon. Okay. And that was after finishing a program of almost 9 years with what was Ace, but then became Chubb.
Okay.
And the only reason why that relationship ended was because Chubb had decided they didn't want to be in the final mile space anymore. But that's the things that, take that for instance. That's something that SCI was able to do, is go out and find somebody that's a big player that can support a program that's as big as it is. Yeah. And, Chubb didn't want any part of this for whatever reason. They had their own reasons. They were just like, no, we don't think we want to move on. So then the question becomes, okay, where are you going to find somebody else?
I want to talk to you later on about that, because obviously, when I put my insurance hat on,
sure,
I've seen some of the challenges of trying to get underwriters or carriers to be interested in this particular space. I want to dig into your thoughts on that. Current events. Last week.
You're going into the deep waters.
I'm just jumping right in there, right?
Yeah,
let's go. Here we are.
I was just about ready to say it's nice of you to dress for Rob's funeral, but then, now you're going. We're not going to go lighthearted.
We got to change the clothes. It's like Superman, Clark Kent. We'll put the cape on in a second. But we have some things happening in the final mile space. There's some news trending right now. Yeah. I did a post on this last week. Two of your competitors are in a lawsuit.
Correct.
Openforce and Gigsafe. Last week, Openforce sued Gigsafe for essentially
misappropriation for trademarks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not trademarks, trade secrets.
Trade secrets. You jumped into the LinkedIn feed, which I was excited that you joined the party just to have a good conversation going.
Yeah, it made me laugh, actually. I had seen DDI's Hagelman.
Aaron.
I used to call him Aaron.
Aaron.
I had saw Aaron's post, and I was kind of like, all right, here's my opportunity.
There you go.
And so I did.
Yeah.
But it's something that I kind of, I look at and I say that this type of stuff. Look, at first and foremost, I'm an attorney. I do, obviously I represent SCI and those things. But from an industry standpoint, I want the industry to thrive. And I'm not suggesting that any side did something wrong, because I just don't know, and you don't know until you see the actual facts come out in the case. But if the allegations are true, this is a sticky case, and it's an ugly look for our industry. And it's something that obviously Openforce felt like they had to do, and I'll explain that a little bit. I just hope it gets resolved and the parties can figure it out without too much drama.
What I'm curious, because of your background, you obviously specialize as a trade secret attorney. And you have the employment law side. So, what stood out about this case when you first saw it?
Well, it's, so just to explain my background in trade secrets, because I was an employment attorney for many years in Southern California, and at the time, apps and businesses, especially mortgage-related businesses, were becoming extremely, they were everywhere. You could become a millionaire owning a brokerage company in Southern California in like 3 days, So what you were having is a lot of employees were moving around, and they were taking whatever they've learned from somebody else, and they're going to the next business. So we did a lot of that type of work, and eventually I was asked to teach a class in it, and so I loved it. And it was a great side focused subject matter. So when I read these things, I don't look at it like the factual stuff is just going to be the factual stuff. What they claim in the thing, I don't have any basis to say, oh, that's particularly wrong or right or whatever. But what I would say is that there's a fundamental issue with trade secret litigation that people don't think about, and I wonder if this was thought about. Look, I'm sure everybody's got great lawyers, and they probably have all said the same thing. But so trade secret litigation is, to me, one of the paradoxical claims that you can make. And it's paradoxical in the sense that you feel very strongly because somebody actually took something from you. You usually have evidence of it. And if you look at that complaint, there is something about that. And so there's that heartfelt emotion about it, not to mention the fact that you feel as though you need to vindicate your position because it's a trade secret. Yeah. And the fact is, under the law, if you don't take care of your trade secret, you lose it, sure. Right? The most famous trade secret ever is Coca-Cola's formula. Two people know it. Apparently, it's in a safe someplace, yeah. But they don't show it to anybody, and they haven't for 150 years because they're worried about that kind of thing. That doesn't mean that somebody can't go and re-engineer it, yeah. But that doesn't lose value as a specific trade secret, even if they can go and tear it apart. They still have a trade secret to the original formula. So you have to vindicate your rights. Yeah. I get that. Yeah. The problem is in these types of situations, I think sometimes you fall in love with your own advertisement. And by that I mean, let me give you a for instance, because I think it'll be clear.
Yeah.
10 years ago, SCI created an app, and we used to have a chat feature on it. We created a chat feature. It was, and we liked it. We thought it was great. About 3 years ago, Openforce came out with a chat feature, and they exclaimed it was a game changer. And I bet for them it was a game changer, right? Mm-hmm. But in the world of where we live, technology and all those things, was it truly a game changer? Probably not. Yeah. I'm saying that you can look at that, call it a game changer, feel it's a game changer because you never offered that particular service before. But does it rise to a level of a trade secret? And that's the issue. It's probably not. Not just because you've exposed some of it, but for the most part, it's out there. We all know, and we all do the same things. I'll give you another for instance.
All right.
And I don't mean to be like picking apart one side on this or the other, but we all service multiple clients. Some of our clients like having both of us, TPAs, service that client. Yeah. If one side was doing something so unique and so much better, do you think all of them would be using both parties multiple to do players. That? Yeah. Probably not. Now, I say that because when you're in trade secret litigation, one of the things that people don't think about is what happens when a judge says what you're alleging as a trade secret is not, right? Now, all your specialness, all your belief that you were being, protecting something and everything, all the advertisement that you put around it now becomes something that a judge said isn't very special. Yeah, yeah. And so you risk that kind of aura of, specialness. And to me, that's something that you really have to consider before you get into one of these things. Yeah. Now, look we're in a small industry. I'm not suggesting what Gigsafe did was appropriate, and I know they did it. How do I know they did it? Let me just show you.
You probably know. We got receipts.
Of course.
You're all lawyer, right?
Sued for defamation. No. So look at that. That's in our system, right? Yes. The individual that's named in that is the same individual that was named in one.
I won't show this on camera because it's confidential information.
But it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny. We knew it was going on.
So you knew this was happening.
I knew it was happening. They looked at our system.
Yeah. But let me just cut you for a second. I'm not an attorney. I don't want to pretend to be one, but
sure.
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not Rob Slack. Rob Slack has done a bunch of things. I've tried a few different things, and part of the due diligence is you try to go to maybe a competitor's website and see what I can find out without sign up or
sure.
Is that what we're talking about here? Like, is it as simple as what I'm thinking, or is it?
Again, well, I mean, by the allegations of the complaint, right? They really allege two things. One, that there was a breach of an NDA.
Right.
So I set that aside because that's more of a breach of a contract issue,
right?
And that's slightly different than the trademark issue, or trade secret issue. Although you could use that as part of the malicious intent part of this. So anyway, to get back to your question, I don't think, I guess. Well, why don't you re-ask that question so that way I can make it?
I guess I'm thinking when I first saw the headline, I was like, wow, they must have some evidence. And then I read it, and I saw a lot of the details, and I'm like, they have something. And then I thought, well, have I just on my own gone behind someone's sign-up wall just to look around? And I'm sure I have. I'm sure a lot of people have. So I guess I'll just try to get your thoughts on it. Is what I know there's two parts of what they're alleging here happened, but is it illegal from a trade secret standpoint to go behind a competitor's paywall?
Well, I mean, but it depends on what you're considering the trade secret, and that's my point.
Yeah.
What you think is special to you, right? SCI, for instance, has dock detection. We'll talk about that a little bit later. That, to me, is like something that we've introduced. It's important. This gentleman used it, right, when he accessed our system.
Yeah.
That's not really a violation of a trade secret.
Yeah.
What's the trade secret is probably more like the code.
The code.
Right?
The tool.
For the tool.
Yeah.
That's probably the trade secret.
The code is not.
So how you, and this is what happens in this type of litigation, is that you think everything you're doing is special, right? I do this and I do that, and my pricing is this, and my pricing, like things like pricing and granted, if you look at the Defend Your Trade Secret Act, which is which is what they reference in the complaint, it's a broad category of things that they say can be a trade secret. But when you really get down to the nitty gritty, it really is. Is that really a trade secret?
Yeah.
And that's where most of these cases fall apart. Is in that. Are you really doing something that's so unknown in the business or can't be found out so easily?
Yeah.
Look, there's only so many ways to process a payment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we think we do it special.
Yeah.
They think they do it special. Gigsafe thinks he does it special.
Yeah.
We all do.
Yeah.
The question is anything about that really a trade secret? I don't, like, if they have the goods and the evidence, fine, let them prove it. I'm just saying it's a difficult case to make.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I never thought about the risk that Openforce may be taking by, putting their cachet, their secret sauce on the table for a judge to say
to evaluate.
To evaluate, that could be a risk factor there.
And the problem is it's going to come well before a trial or anything like that. You're going to have a summary judgment and those types of things. Yeah. So there's moments where this can get tested.
Yeah.
And for a business look at Openforce does a wonderful job. I'm not trying to beat them up about this.
Yeah.
This is a difficult situation.
Yeah.
It's difficult because somebody came into your system with a bad intent and to try to look at what you were doing. Yeah. And I get that part.
The thing I'm really interested to see how this plays out, and I got no dog in the fight here. I do want to come back to the point you made about the industry in a second, but I think about it from former final mile owner. I think from the carrier perspective, right? If I was in the middle of this as a customer of either of these TPAs, when you read through the details, it's you're putting the customer somewhere in the crosshairs here, and I'm very curious to see how this plays itself out from a optics standpoint, from a marketplace standpoint. I'm not even thinking about the legal side right now.
But I agree with your point. Look, at the one thing that I would say, and this is why I was talking about it from a final mile industry standpoint.
Yeah,
I get phone calls all the time from courier company owners who say, we trusted that guy with our client, and now he's going around and taking it. He took my pricing. He knows all my stuff. He knows the route. He knows this. And my response to that is, okay, well, I get it. This guy is in a position to do that. But he's an independent contractor. he's going to do it, and you have to be better. You have to make sure that your client knows that you're the one that's performing the service and can do it much better. That if they're going to stick with that person, that's going to go nowhere. There's some protections you can do, but most of the courts are going to look at those things and say, well, geez, now you're directing and controlling.
Yeah, it's a free market, yeah.
My point in saying all that is it's very difficult when you have an industry that looks like it's just robbing from each other. I don't like the look, and that's what I'm saying. What Gigsafe did, if true, and like I said, I know they looked around, and that's fine. I'm not making a big deal about it. Yeah. I'm just suggesting. I know that it happened. Yeah. But it's not a great look.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's a point well made, and I think I was going to ask you a question. So, what does this say about the landscape of final mile compliance, kind of driver onboarding? I responded to one of the posts, and I was like, if you're an IC out there, this should signal something to you that you're pretty valuable in this whole ecosystem.
Absolutely.
That if you didn't understand that before, just look around. So what does that mean for the?
Well, obviously they're valuable, right? If you get somebody that can perform the service and do it well, that means something to you as a business owner, whether that's an independent contractor, employee, or anything. Mm-hmm. But I get back to this, and this is what I would say. There's a reason why we didn't pursue anything about this. And it's because of I know how difficult the litigation is. Mm-hmm. You had said it best in your opening when I saw that was, you're going to spend blood, treasure, a lot of time, energy, and it's going to sap your business out of a lot of stuff that you could have been, putting your effort towards. Mm-hmm. So I'm always cautious about litigation whenever it happens, even if you feel like you're absolutely justified. Yeah. But in the end, what I think is the most important is the way to defeat this type of stuff is innovate, be better, develop more, be as best as you can be. I think there'll always be copycats.
Sure.
And that's a form of flattery, as everybody knows, right?
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's really about performing better for the client. So whether it's customer service that you have to work on, whether it's your processes or any of those things, do it better.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing that's going to save you in the end. There will always be somebody that will come knocking on the door to take a look at behind the curtain.
Yeah. That's true. And it's a good segue to my next talking point, which is why is SCI better? Right, so you mentioned you've been in a situation. I was one of the questions was, have you experienced this before? Clearly, you have. And you brought. It's the first person that brought receipts to the podcast. So
I got to bring the truck.
Future guests. I'm all about it. So
it's the first lawyer you've had on here.
You are the first. You're the first lawyer. You've been watching.
I'm going to bring paperwork.
Would be right. But we talk about SCI and. You guys have been around for many years. I think people, when I still hear the name SCI, the first thing I hear people say is we know they're going to be there to help us out and defend and respond. So I just want to, tell us why SCI. What's the differentiator about
the
solution?
I think it's two things, and we've already mentioned about it. One is laser focused on making sure that the customer gets what they need. At the end of the day, we're going to have people come into this marketplace and leave the marketplace. Mm-hmm. We talked about Aaron.
Yeah.
He was here in a blink of an eye and gone. We're here to stay. So that means that I've got to be able to have a team that's capable of answering your questions, of responding to what you're going to need, any of those types of things. So it starts, you're a football player. It's blocking and tackling, right? It's all the fundamentals. Yep. Doing the small things really well. I was just having this conversation with one of our heads of IT, and he didn't think about it like in that particular way. But we have reduced response times for phone calls, for posting things in our database and stuff like that immensely. Yeah. Now with our AI support from doc detection and those things, we've innovated in a way that this industry hasn't seen before.
Talk doc detection. So just walk me through an example. I know I heard you at the ECA conference talk about it, but I want the audience to understand what's so unique about what happens specific step by step.
Absolutely. So a lot of people have just like the ability to scan a document or any of those things, right? That's not very innovative.
Sure.
But when you start getting involved with large language models, now you can start doing some neat things with pulling the data off. So imagine you have a driver's license, right? There's a barcode on that. There's information there.
Yeah.
I can take that information, put it into our system, then it's posted into the system. But it not only does that, it goes out into these large language models, some of the APIs that we have, and now it starts to verify that information. Wow. So imagine that now you're not looking at, how many times, and you probably been through, right?
I know
you got all sorts of driver's licenses and stuff like that.
Stuff. Yeah.
And given where we're at currently, with the influx of people that have come into the country, we're going to see more and more documents like that.
Yeah.
And it's become a bigger issue. I think a couple years ago, during COVID, I would say the biggest challenge was probably recruiting. I don't think we don't hear too much about that anymore.
That's true.
What I do hear about is compliance, because people understand, especially those that have been involved in legal issues, whether it be a car accident, misclassification, or something along those lines. Those generally start with the worst, baddest apples, right? The guy who doesn't have a good license, the guy who has no insurance, or
see him coming a mile away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just big trouble. So detecting that and being able to do that. Now, everything is run by your phone. We're, taking pictures by a phone, right?
Yeah.
But this phone now takes a picture, uploads it to our system. It doesn't just sit there as a scanned document.
Okay.
It's being worked on, and it's being worked on because it's being able to verify information.
How long does it take to verify? Is it pretty?
It's very quick. It's like that.
And this was important for. I'm sure folks that's watching this probably know this, but if you don't, when you work with independent contractors, there's often gaps in coverage where you need to be able to know that they have the MVR, verifying driver's license, verifying insurance up to date. And oftentimes the way it's done now has been very manual.
Yeah.
Right? So I remember in my business, it was my customer service rep who had 10 other jobs, but every month she had to go in through and look at the list and try to get drivers to scan in or fax in just to verify it. And they could bait and switch it too. They could produce it one day and cancel the next day. So there's a lot of potential gaps.
So for instance, like in June alone, not only are we announcing like that we're having a new client portal.
Okay.
We've been developing it for a while. We realized that there was parts of our old portal that were a little clunky and needed to be enhanced. So we've set a team onto that. That's coming out in June. The other big event is we are now taking so doc detection. That was the first iteration of doc detection. The second iteration of it was now somebody being able to take a picture of, say they had a card or something that you required as a courier company to make sure that they had that individual had. So sometimes in medical transports, right, they needed a security card or something. You want to make sure that they have it. They take a picture of it. Doc detection not only takes the picture and looks at it, it recognizes what it is. It says this is valid because we know what this looks like. So that's the second iteration of it. We call it object detection, but that's what it can do. Then the third iteration of this is it's going to be able to take, say, and you just mentioned this, the challenge of verifying insurance levels, right? Yes. Somebody gives you their deck page, and you think, oh, yeah, great, they got it. And they've already canceled it, and they've moved on, and they don't have insurance. Well, now with the doc detection system, not only can I verify the levels that they have, but I can also, through a lot of the APIs that we're going to be running with insurance companies and with other companies that do third-party, like verifying deck pages, it's going to automatically tell you that deck page is good and that person still has insurance.
That's a game changer.
Well, I mean, I hate to use that word because but it's a big. But you know what it means in this industry to send somebody out. The fear of sending somebody out without insurance on that vehicle. I mean, that's your business, right?
That's it.
And so, for a lot of people that are small businesses and those things, it's the single most important thing.
Yeah. So, you mentioned you guys work with 40,000 plus drivers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most of those drivers, I'm assuming, contracted with companies that you work with as well.
Mm-hmm.
From a pain point or challenge standpoint, we just talked about doc detection and what it can solve. What are the other big challenges or issues that you're hearing from your clients today?
Yeah. As far as having people prepared to be able to do the work, right? Affordable insurance is always a challenge.
Sure.
It's just, it just is. We're working on an in-sell product. That's an in-service product. We'll probably be announcing that in July.
Okay.
To have that, both the regular car insurance and then commercial insurance operate together is tricky. It's out there already. Mm-hmm. In various iterations. We think that what we're going to do is make it better. I've always said, and I agreed with when we had talked previously about this, about having, cameras and all the telematics is hugely important. Mm-hmm. I think it's going that way. It will go that way.
It has to.
Because it's there. You're just not going to ignore the
precedent's been set.
And actually what's going to happen is people are going to get sued and they're going to say, why didn't you have it?
Yeah.
Right?
We talk about this on other episodes. Trucking industry's already
absolutely
adopted it, and it's a foregone conclusion almost now that you...
Yeah. You have to have it. In the trucking world, to avoid a nuclear judgment, you have to do it. And it's actually proven more beneficial than hazardous. The driver's been right more times than not.
Yeah, right.
I'm also a part of the Transportation Lawyers Association, so I go to these trucking conventions all the time, and it's just a bunch of lawyers talking about their worst cases, and the data proves that out, that most of the time the driver is actually right.
Yeah.
And because he has the telematics to prove it.
Yeah.
It proves it out for him. But so there's that challenge. I think, you just come back to blocking and tackling. Mm-hmm. Making sure that you're being responsive to individuals. This, at the end of the day, every company is dealing with hundreds, if not thousands, of independent contractors. And these guys, they get up with their own worries, their own problems. They're trying to make ends meet, get all that stuff done. The last thing they want is a bump in the road. And so for us, making sure that our customer service people are there, ready to help them, capable of helping them, and resolving the problem is, I think, one of the biggest things that we can do. I don't mean this disparagingly, but a lot of the companies that we compete against are, farming that customer service out to Central Europe. A lot of them don't even have an office with people in it anymore. Mm-hmm. And that causes problems when you're trying to solve individual human problems.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, because I mentioned earlier, one of the things that you always hear about SCI was they're there when you need them. Do you guys still defend clients in court and represent them?
We do on a lot of things. Not, as much as we can. There's some things that you just can't take on.
Sure.
Ultimately we're a small company, but I still have 3 attorneys that I work with. So most of the government audit stuff, most of the UI or workers' comp stuff, we're taking care of for our clients.
Yeah.
So that's a big separator to me. I mean, of course, when we're dealing with civil cases and those types of things, I'm involved in all of it. There's nothing that I'm not sitting in on.
Yeah.
So whether it's a strategy session or something along those lines, talking to counsel that's that's actually doing it, I'm there throughout the whole thing. So that's why I say I'm not that far away from litigation.
Got it.
Now,
you've probably seen hundreds, if not thousands, of these cases, misclassification cases. What's the worst case you've seen? What's the worst judgment you've seen, maybe?
Oh, well, I will tell you, and I say this quite often to our clients too, because I think that they need to understand. Sometimes I say things to our clients that they don't want to hear, and they think I'm being obstinate or a little bit shutting them down a little bit. But it comes from experience. Most of the worst cases that I've had dealt with have come because of somebody needing payment for $100 or less. So I've been involved in cases where, we've paid out, not we, but people have paid out over $500,000 because the driver was owed $100. That is a crime.
Penny wise, pound foolish.
It gets back to what I say about customer service, because you're never going to get away from misclassification under these circumstances, right? Yeah. The politics of it, and especially in certain states, is the way it is. You're not going to get around that. What you are going to be able to do is head off a lot of the cases by being good at customer service.
Yeah.
Proactively taking an approach that you get involved and you make sure that driver gets what they need, whether it's the $100 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's it. But I can't hold that card up and say, look we got 0 cases, and this is because of us.
There's no silver bullets.
Yeah, there's no glory in it necessarily. So I don't like to talk about wins in cases. Yes, we've had wins and we've done those things, but let's be honest, most of these cases end in settlement. And the question is a good settlement worth the decision? Yeah, it can be. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've seen what happens when cases go bad, right?
You can go nuclear.
Yeah.
So, I'm always surprised. I talk to a lot of owners in my day-to-day work about how many still don't use a third-party administrator, or in some cases they understand it and they just have made the conscious decision, like, hey, it's not for us. Other times they're just, inexperienced and maybe haven't become that familiar with what the value is of a TPA. What do you, like, when you see that, I'm sure you run across that too, do you find it more state-specific, certain carriers that say, hey, I'm in a state where I feel I'm a little bit more protected with the current laws, the way the court cases have played out?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because 90% of the people that I hear that from are from Texas. They all think like that because they live in Texas, they're not going to get sued. They haven't been down to Houston before. They haven't been down to some of the more liberal parts of Texas where independent contractors don't really exist. So yeah, there is that part of it. There is state specific, but it's really not. It's mindset specific more than anything. I get it. People, some people have to have drivers and they want to pay them a certain amount, and they don't want to think about, like, okay, what's the OCAC going to cost, and what are these other charges and add-ons? Yeah. That extra expense it can be devastating to some people. But in this day and age, I think if you're not helping yourself, especially if you're in a bad location, by having an extra set of eyes on what's going on at the ground level, I think you're doing yourself a disservice and your business a disservice. I've listened to a lot of attorneys talk about the master contractor model, and they're all trying to say the same thing, which is create distance. And it's some of that can be done with a good TPA that's in there involved and doing the things that a good TPA should do. Yeah. So, that's basically it. What
would you say for if someone was starting a final mile business like today's? They dropped off, off the face of the earth and dropped down here and said, I want to get into a final mile delivery business.
I'd be like Rob Slack and get like 500 drivers without business right now and just head right into it. He would head headlong into it. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What would you advise? What's the first thing they should be thinking about specific to misclassification? Like, what's the best way to protect myself?
It's always about how you treat the individual. I mean, ultimately, it's about respect. It's about understanding that person is supposed to be an independent contractor, because a driver can be an independent contractor. They'll exclaim it to the top of the hill when they get up there, and they'll say, I'm an independent contractor, until they're not. And then they're in court, and then they're in court saying, no, I was an employee. That doesn't mean you have to be beholden to them. It doesn't mean you have to kowtow to them, but you do have to treat them with respect. And I think that's a big issue, right? There's time pressures. There's all sorts of delivery pressures. I get that, and we all get that, right? That's just the nature of the business. But ultimately, it's about being consistently respectful to each individual.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to wrap up with this. I like to you should put your projection hat on, like predicting the future, right? The genie in the bottle, right? If we were to look out 3-5 years from now, what do you predict kind of the big changes you will see in the final mile space, and kind of from your lens of it? And I'm curious. I'm assuming there's been a lot of growth in SCI's business over the last few years. You see more and more interest in final mile, more opportunities. The common person's now aware of it thanks to Amazon, the kind of Amazon effect. Yeah. But then there's also the other side of it where, the gig, ride share economy has, put a bad stain on some things too, in terms of insurance costs going up. And you've had some just operational challenges, and it's hurt some of our kind of core businesses too. But where you see it from your kind of vantage point, what do you predict is going to happen?
Yeah, where do I see it go? Well, I mean, obviously, I think as we move further along in this, people are going to get more used to the idea that the independent contractor is here to stay, and we have to eventually make room for it in a way that isn't so heavy-handed, like California, those things. Mm-hmm. I think at the end of the day, there will be big changes. Portability and benefits will be an issue. I think independent contractors that don't have portable benefits will be looked at as like not independent contractors.
Portable benefits. Explain that right quick.
Yeah, so like insurances, Akron, those things that can cross whoever they travel with the individual. Yeah. Whether it's healthcare benefits and all those kind of things, but OCAC and those types of insurance benefits, being portable, being mobile to the individual, I think is going to be a big issue. I think also you're going to see some states, and I think we're starting to see a little bit more of this, is we've moved from a civil hostility. By that I mean New Jersey, California has kind of done things to be hostile to independent contractors, but they've kept it on the civil side of the fence. Yeah. I think some of it is going to leak over into the criminal side. I think misclassification, you've seen it in New Jersey. They're one of the few states that has it right now. Really? I do think that's going to start to, especially in some of the blue states. That doesn't mean that they'll use it, but I think that they're going to ratchet it up a little bit, that misclassification stuff. Wow. So I think that's a negative on that side. But ultimately, this is not going away. So we're going to the legislatures throughout the country are going to have to figure out a way to make this work. I think those that can are going to succeed, and those that can't obviously are going to fail. So, I mean, I'm hoping at the end of the day, SCI stays on the cutting edge, which I think we have been, and we really do focus on it. And I think that's ultimately who's going to win in these games. Yeah.
I'm gonna end with this. You dropped another LinkedIn post yesterday, 2 days ago maybe, and it said, while your competitors
2 in 10 years, I've never done it before.
we created some motion out there in the LinkedIn world. But you said, while your competitors are in competition or in court, we're in service.
Say that again.
I think you said, while your competitors are in court, we're in service.
Oh, that was the marketing. Yeah, that's a little cheeky. That's a little cheeky.
We may edit that part out, but
no. We put it out there. Look we're in a small fishbowl at the end of the day.
Compete.
We're going to take some swipes at everybody. They're going to take swipes at us. They've been doing it for years, right? I mean, I know this isn't the Rob Slack part of it, but Rob was their president. Rob worked for Openforce. He was our president for 15 years. Things like that are going to happen. Yeah. I think it's taken in good humor. I hope they take it in good humor.
Well, I love it, man. I thank you for being on the podcast, for sharing your insights and wisdom from your background. I think that's enlightening to me and hopefully to the audience. And I just love hearing all the things that you got going on at SCI.
Appreciate
some
it.
New technology, new innovations, and still. For those out there, I'm telling you, if you're looking for a TPA partner that's going to stand by you, that's a lot what they're known for, and you get the technology coming nowadays too. So, Pete, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was a good time.
Thank you. All right, Last and First family, we are out. Jason Burns, I'm your host, and I hope you enjoyed this exclusive off-season interview with SCI. Peace out.